Hello, I'm Bill Monroe, and welcome to episode 83 of 2-Minute Talk Tips. This week's tip, note something interesting every day. One of the things Dale Carnegie said is that to be interesting, be interested. It's helpful to be interested in different things that go on around you in order to become a more effective speaker. You know, way back in college, in order to be competitive in the event of impromptu speaking, we made lists of things that we knew about. I wrote up a few paragraphs to flesh out those topics. It wasn't about having a canned speech ready to go for an impromptu competition. It was about reminding me of all of the things that I knew that I could talk about should they be relevant. That notebook included things like an overview of the career of Jeannette Rankin, the first woman to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives, the physics of satellite motion, hint, they're always falling, poetry by Gabriel Garcia Marquez, an analysis of Dead Poets Society, and just all sorts of other stuff. To create more interesting presentations, though, you need to know what it is that you know, because you know and experience a lot of stuff every day. But when we need it, we often just can't think of it. So this is similar to the tip I gave back in episode 24, where I told you to take 5 pictures a day. My tip today is to write down one interesting thing that you saw, did, or learned every day, and just keep a running list of those things. When you're stumped for what to talk about in a talk, or what you want to talk about to make a point, or to make an analogy, or anything like that, go ahead and take a look at your list. You do this every day, and by the end of the year, you will have hundreds of things and examples that you are ready to dive deeper into. Stick around, and after the break, we're going to talk about the 6 P's of presenting. Over the last almost 2 years, I've talked about a lot of different ideas and strategies and tools to be a more effective speaker, and all of those are helpful. And I've had some awesome guests sharing their expertise about different phases of developing a presentation. But this week, I want to step back a little bit and look at the big picture so we can sort of start to see where all of this stuff comes together. There are really 6 P's of building a presentation. Number 1 is preparation. Number 2 is production. Number 3 is practice. Number 4 is pre-show. Number 5 is present. And number 6 is the post-mortem. See, basically, this outline is a framework to schedule the tasks you need to do as you build a presentation, or to give you the outline of how you could project manage a big talk that you're planning to do. The level of your talk, the importance of it, the scale of your audience, the people that you're going to be talking to, its impact on your organization, all of those things will determine how formal it is that you build out this list. For a really major presentation or keynote, maybe you're going to go ahead and use this as a framework in a tool like Microsoft Project, or building out a multi-step spreadsheet to figure this out. For a smaller departmental briefing of something you already know well, maybe you're going to run through most of these steps in your head and abbreviate the process. So let the context be a guide, but really these different elements are all part of a successful presentation. And of course, pretty much all tasks will fall into one of these 6 phases. And there can be some overlap between the phases. It's not going to be a strict concrete wall defining the edges of them. The value in the framework, though, is that it gives you a place to start. It gives you a path so you can plan out what you want to do. It helps you think about the different tasks, and it gives you the tools to identify problems in your presentation early in the process while there's still plenty of time to fix them and make your talk as effective as you possibly can. So what do each of these phases look like? Over the next few minutes, we're going to go through and look at each of these 6 elements. And let's start with preparation. I talk about preparation all the time because it is really the most important element of building a talk. Generally, 90% of your success in a presentation is going to be determined by how well you do your prep work. You really have to spend the time doing this right, because if you do that, then everything else becomes easier down the road. So as part of your preparation, you need to figure out, why are you speaking? What's the goal here? What is it that you want to accomplish? What will be your definition of success? Is it just to impart knowledge? Is your goal to go ahead and motivate people to change their behavior, or to improve a project that you're doing, or to be more effective in their lives, or to give you more budget, or whatever it is? You need to start by defining your goal. What do you want people to do at the end of your talk? What do you want them to do with what they've learned while they are listening to you? And a big part of that is you have to know who the audience is. Who are you going to be speaking with? You need to figure that out so you can do things like adjust your language as appropriate. If you're going to be talking to an audience of 9-year-olds, that's going to be a very different talk than if you're talking to an audience of CEOs. So you need to plan accordingly. So the audience will determine the level of expertise or the level of jargon you use in your talk so that you can communicate most effectively with them. It's going to determine whether or not they are decision makers or whether they are passing along information to others that will be making decisions, and that will define your goal. You need to know where they are. You need to understand what concerns your audience has so that you can attune your message to those concerns. Part of this preparation phase is also about understanding what subject matter experts or SMEs you will need to bring into this process. Many times you may actually be the subject matter expert who's being brought in to talk to somebody else's audience. Or you may need to partner with different subject matter experts in your organization, people who have the details and knowledge of the subject you're going to be talking about, but maybe aren't the right ones to be presenting. Maybe you're consolidating information from a number of different subject matter experts in order to put together a more comprehensive presentation. But understand who the SMEs are and who needs to be involved in your development process. Understand who the other stakeholders are. Are there people who are going to need to sign off on your presentation, who are going to need to approve the outline, the people who are providing budget for this project, the people who are providing you the opportunity to go out and speak in this context? Do they need to sign off on your content at various points in the process? Figure that out as part of the preparation process. Figure out the core logistics. What resources are you going to have at your disposal? Where is this presentation going to happen? When will it happen? What is the venue going to be like? Is it going to be in a classroom? Is it going to be in an auditorium? Will you be using a microphone? Will you just need to project? How big is the expected audience? All of these key logistics will help inform what you are doing as you develop more of the content later on. Do you need to make plans to have giveaways or swag? Do you need to prepare handouts or outlines for folks? Once you start collecting all of that information, and once you start defining your goals and then outlining your presentation and figuring out which pieces of information you're going to share, how you are going to build your discussion, at the end of this, you should have all of your core logistics understood, and you should also have an outline of your talk based around your goals and based around the different items you are going to talk about in order to support those goals. You should have an idea of the different demos that you are planning to do, that you are going to need resources for, that you're going to need special equipment for. Figure out all of this stuff in the preparation phase. At the end of it, you'll have an outline that will make going forward so much easier. On the other hand, mistakes that are made here can pollute the entire process downstream. If you fundamentally misunderstand your goal or your tasks or the core audience or any of that, it is going to make the rest of your work, the rest of your presentation, much less effective. So get it right here. Build a solid foundation, because once you have that solid foundation, then you can support so much other stuff. 90% of your success is going to be determined pretty much at this stage. So once you've done all of your preparation, then it's time to move into production. Out of your preparation, you have your outline, you have your goal, you know what it is you're going to be accomplishing. Now is when you can actually go ahead and open up PowerPoint or Keynote or Slides or whatever tool you're using to create your visual aids. Now is when you can go ahead and start turning your outline of content into the tools that are going to support you as a speaker. And as you go ahead and build that slide deck, consider, do your slides support you as the speaker? Don't let them take over. Don't let the slides be the most important part of the presentation. Remember, that is you, the presenter, the one who's going to be speaking. The slides work for you. It's not the other way around. Are your slides legible? Given what you know about the venue and about the audience, will everybody be able to see what's on your slides? If not, rethink those slides. Are they visually focused? If you're just putting a ton of words up on your slides, is that really going to help you land your point? Figure out how you can work with images, graphics, photos to really help land your points, because again, it's going to support you, the speaker. If somebody just looks through your slides without your talk, they probably won't be able to understand what you're talking about, and that's okay. The slides do not replace you. Do you need any custom graphics built? Go ahead and work with your graphic design department or your artists or whomever to build those graphics for your slides. Or maybe you need to have additional visual aids built for your environment, for your audience, for the theater or wherever you're going to be speaking. Think about those and start working on those and getting that stuff done. Whether you're going to build that yourself, do you need other visual aids? Are there other physical things you'll be taking on stage with you? Are you going to be using props? Figure out all of that and assemble that stuff in this stage. Are there things you're going to be demonstrating? Demonstrations can be really powerful and they can be really tricky, especially if you're talking about early stage products. So when you go ahead and prepare your demos, whether it's going to be a virtual demo or whether that's going to be a physical demo, you need to figure out what the script is for that. What steps are you planning to take through that demo? What features are you going to show off? Remember, you can show off some basic stuff, and if it's a really cool product, people will still be impressed. Is your demo going to rely on the internet? That is always super risky. What are you going to do if the internet connection fails? And when there's a full audience of people, it's even more likely to fail. So think through that stuff to begin with. Do you have a process for getting your demo back to the zero state? In other words, can you get it back to the way it was at the beginning of your presentation? Maybe this means if you're demoing software, you're clearing off demo records, or you're resetting a machine, or there's all sorts of things that this could mean. But you have to be able to have the tools in place to get your demo back to its initial state, back to its zero state, because otherwise it becomes a heck of a lot more difficult to practice it later on. How is your gear going to get to the event? Are you just carrying stuff in your bag? Are you just carrying your computer? Are you just sending your slides on ahead? Are you packing up a bunch of stuff in a suitcase? Do you have a shipping department that's going to be sending pallets of signs and demo gear and handouts and books on ahead? It really is going to vary based on your presentation and your audience and what you're trying to accomplish. But at this stage, you want to make sure that as part of your production, you are putting together that plan for getting your gear to the event and packing it up and shipping it off if necessary. Has someone reviewed your slides? If you're building slides, it's always a good idea to have somebody go through them so that you can catch any spelling errors or any weird graphic elements early on, especially if you're going to be using charts or things that might be a little more complicated. Find out if the people are going to have a tendency to misinterpret them at this stage. Also, we talked about stakeholders before. Do your stakeholders need to go ahead and review these slides as well, or review the rest of the content? Now is going to be a great time to get those reviews going because they will always take longer than they ought to. Have you figured out what you're going to wear during this presentation? That may or may not matter, but again, it's going to vary presentation by presentation. If you're going to be speaking at an event where you will have a microphone and a wireless microphone pack, where are you going to attach that wireless microphone pack? Is it going to hang on your belt? Is it going to hang on your pocket? Are you going to be wearing a belt? Are you going to have pockets? Consider this stuff in advance and decide what you are going to wear to make it as simple as possible. You see, this is the phase of the presentation where you actually go ahead and take your goals and take your messages and bring that together to build the presentation deck and the rest of the supporting materials. Of course, it's not done yet because you may need to go back here and fix stuff and change stuff as you go through the next phase of presentation, and that is practice. Practice your talk. You see, as much as you can, practice with your slides while standing up. Practice your demos in the most real-world way possible. You want to be comfortable doing that on stage when the live time comes. And the only way to get there is to practice it. You want to find out if something is not going to go wrong. You want to find out now while you're practicing rather than when you are on stage. You do not have to worry about being over-rehearsed. It's simply not going to happen. The more you practice, the more comfortable you'll be, the more natural that you will see on stage while you're talking with folks, and the more natural and confident that you seem, the more compelling your presentation will be. Practice is so important because practice will tell you which phrases don't quite roll off the tongue in the right way. Practice will tell you which demos are going to be difficult to execute or which demos won't work. Practice will tell you when your slides are going to need to be rewritten or reordered or done in a different way. Practice will tell you if your outline makes sense. And if your outline doesn't make sense when you actually start speaking, find out in practice so you can go back and change it and fix it. Because practice isn't just about you getting comfortable on stage, although that is a critical element of it. Practice is also about finding out where stuff doesn't work so that you can fix it and so that you can get it right. It's all about giving you time to fix things, to go back to the production phase if need be, or to even backtrack all the way to the preparation phase if you have to go all the way back there. Don't be surprised on stage. Learn the hitches in practice and fix them. And that brings us to the next step in the presentation, and that is the pre-show. You've prepped, you've produced, and you've practiced, and you're almost ready to present now. Now it's time for pre-show. And in pre-show, you travel to the venue. Maybe that's just walking down the hall to a conference room. Maybe that's getting on a plane and flying to a different city. But you want to visit the venue as early as you can. Hopefully at least the day before the event, or at the very least the morning of the event. You want to check out that room. Are the chairs in the right place? Are they in the right shape? Do the lights work? Do you know how to operate them if you're going to have to operate that stuff yourself? Do you know how to connect to the projector? Is there a projector? Are you hooking into the wall? Are you hooking onto a table? Does it work with your device? Are there any quirks with the internet if you're going to be doing internet-based demos? Have you talked with the AV folks, or are there AV folks? Do you need to do a sound check? Do you know how to use the microphone that you have if you have one? Did the swag or giveaways that you plan to give away during your presentation make it to your event? Is the space right for your attendees? Are there any last minute changes you need to make based on where you are now? Do your demos still work right before your event? You see, this is all the stuff that can be sort of a final checklist before you begin your presentation. And again, it's going to vary based on the scale of your presentation and what you are trying to accomplish. But the pre-show is your last chance to do your walkthrough, to get there and to fix any last minute problems that are popping up. You want to give yourself a cushion to fix those so that you have some time to fix something before your presentation starts, or so that you have time to notify somebody of a problem and get it taken care of. Don't wait until your presentation is due to begin to get started on doing this stuff. And once your pre-show is all done and the time comes, then we finally move on to the present phase. Now it's showtime. Start on time, finish on time, manage the various aspects of your performance or your talk as you practiced. Now is when you can use all of those other theatrical elements of pacing, of interacting with the crowd, of managing questions, managing all of that other stuff that we have certainly talked about. This is really what most folks think of when they think about doing the presentation, that this is all they think it is. But it's really about so much more that happens before this. This phase is just the execution of all of those other steps, of all of that other planning and preparation and production and pre-show and practice. If all the other phases went well, then you position yourself for real success here. This may be all that the audience sees, but it is the culmination of so much other work. And then, afterwards, it's all done, right? Well, almost. We still have to do the post-mortem, and this is that final step. This is the debrief. The post-mortem is the post-event reporting, what you do after your presentation is over. And there's a number of key elements to that. Think about first your follow-up tasks. What questions did folks ask that you need to get answers to? Go ahead and start finding those answers and get those answers back to folks. Are there follow-up actions that you need to take? Do you need to make some introductions? Do you need to send out some supplementary material? What other actions did you commit to during your presentation that you are going to need to execute on now? What worked well? Figure out what went really well during your presentation so you can do more of that in the future. And just as importantly, figure out what did not work well. What do you need to do differently next time? What didn't land as effectively as you had hoped? Why do you think that was? What do you want to do better? Think about, how did your slides, your visuals, and your demos work? Were they effective? Were you able to do them the way you had planned to do them? What questions did people ask? This is one of my favorite things to keep track of, because even if you could answer those questions, it's still important to keep track of what they asked, because the questions that people ask, especially over time, and especially as you do more and more presentations, will tell you where the weak spots of your presentation are. What areas do you need to beef up more? If people are asking the same question all the time, that means you're not addressing that question adequately in your presentation. So questions that the audience asks you are a valuable source of feedback on what you need to do better. When you go ahead and do this, it's tempting to put it off a few days or a week and then circle back on it. But really, you need to do this as soon as possible. Ideally, the same day as your event. Because if the longer you wait, the more small details you will forget. You'll start crafting a narrative in your head about how the presentation went. And the longer you do, the longer it takes you to get that done, the further separated from reality your interpretation of that presentation will be. So do this as soon as possible. And then don't just put those notes aside. Use those notes to make your next presentation even better. And use those notes to provide input into the preparation phase of your next talk and continue the cycle. So those are the 6 P's of presentations: preparation, production, practice, pre-show, present, and post-mortem. Use this framework to plan your next talk and tell me how it works out for you. So what do you think of the 6P framework? Let us know in the comments over 2minutetalktips.com/6P. Please rate and review 2-Minute Talk Tips in Apple Podcasts or in whatever podcast rating tool you have access to. Be sure to note something interesting every day. And of course, as always, don't get best, get better. Thanks a lot. I'm Bill Monroe, and I'll talk to you next week.
2-Minute Talk Tips is a proud production of the Currently Speaking Podcast Network.